One. And we are recording with the one and only Mr. Jeff Nyquist. I have not read In Plain Sight. I've read a ton of UFO books, some better than others. Guys have interviewed Larry Holcomb, who had presidents in UFOs, Dr. Lynn Katai, who witnessed the Phoenix Lights in '97. Um, what's his name? Nick Pope, who was the head of the UFO, I guess, research department for the Ministry of Defense in the UK. And I've tried to get on other guys. I've tried time and time again and failed to get Bob Lazar. Um,
He
and
doesn't like to talk to people.
he does not. I have
Yeah.
found that out. He does, which to me just makes it all the more credible.
Well, if I were him, I wouldn't want to talk to people. It's not a subject for mixed company. Now, Jacques Vallée, the scientist, a
Yeah.
serious scientist who's had security clearances, he's worked on it for his whole adult life. I think his first book, he was practically in graduate school, was Anatomy of a Phenomenon. I think that came out in 59 or 60. I think he's 82 now.
Yeah.
And I followed his work. He has written an interesting autobiography, which is kind of an autobiography about a person who's interested in scientific methodology, physics, computer science, and what is the truth? What is the ultimate truth? What's going on? And I think he knew, because of the ridicule factor, people weren't going to talk about the subject. Scientists didn't want to get involved, but he created something he called the Invisible College. Scientists who could deny that they had anything to do with looking into it, but that he could at least pick their brain and get them to look
Mhm.
at some evidence. And of course, he ran around with J. Allen Hynek during Blue
Mhm.
Book. He did a lot of the interviews, and now what's really remarkable. I just saw him do a podcast about this new book of his, Trinity. I don't know if you've heard about it.
No, but I know he was just on what is it? He always forgets Jeremy or Jeffrey Mishlove. He's got a guy.
Mhm.
Yeah, I've also tried to get on, but I just saw that he had went on that podcast like 2 weeks ago, I think.
As a matter of discipline, always been interested in the philosophy of science, and when you're talking about a mystery that nobody can figure out very easily, um, this is one that is a test of methodology,
Yeah.
or maybe even developing a new methodology. And so I followed his work, and it was a part of my education in the philosophy of science. And what I'm surprised at, having followed his work, in the early 90s, I think it was around 1990 anyway, he came out with his his theory, which was in a book called Dimensions. And his theory was that the UFO phenomenon, is not extraterrestrial.
It's
And he
interdimensional.
gives
All
he
right.
gives another number of reasons. He says it's interdimensional. And he gives a bunch of reasons. There's too many sightings. It's too interactive. It's been around too long. And so it's a rather remarkable theory, because if you read his first book, Anatomy of a Phenomenon, he's looking at the extraterrestrial theory to see if it matches the data. And he kind of says, well, it seems to match the data. But then, during the 60s, with books like Passport to Magonia, in which he kind of uses a cultural, it looks at mythology and the human, legends and stuff about little people abducting people. You go to Shakespeare, and there's that line in Hamlet near the beginning when they're waiting for the ghost of Hamlet's father, and he talks about Christmas time being so holy that no fairy takes, right? Or no witch's spell is effective. So no fairy takes. Do you mean little people who take people? Little people who abduct people. So
Mm.
Passport to Magonia is like, wait a minute, these stories about people being abducted by little people have been in different human cultures for hundreds and hundreds of years. The Swedes, my ancestors, have the Tuntas, and my mom even had little statues of them. Tuntas are like Scandinavian leprechauns, right?
Yeah.
And you've got it in Ireland. You've got the famous. So you go, well, what is this? What is it? Not sure, but it's in human consciousness. And you've got, and then he goes to Messengers of Deception, where he looks at the UFO cults, and he says there's political and philosophic and religion. It's almost like a new religion is being born from this phenomenon. And he even wrote a book. The subtitle was Alien Contact and Human Deception, about how governments had got involved in faking UFO abductions. The French government, he shows the French government, the US government. Well, the US government didn't fake an abduction, but they faked a major UFO incident. And then he talks about the Soviets. In fact, he went to the Soviet Union, I think it was 89 or 90. And that book was fascinating, because then you're looking at a different country that's sort of on the other side of the Iron Curtain, and he goes back there, and what did they want to talk to him about? They weren't really interested in his theories. They wanted to know what he knew about ancient holy sites as related to UFOs. Ancient temples, it's like, what? Right? So you suddenly find, and so he's gone the whole gamut. He is not a one-dimensional Charlie. He's realizing this is really a complex phenomenon that has to do with the human mind and the soul, the spirit, religion, politics, sociology, mythology, and of course, philosophy of science and, interdimension physics, very strange. So it is one of those subjects that touches on all the big questions, right?
Yeah.
So, and that's why, people are like, you talk about that? It's like, no, anything that's big that touches on everything else may provide a wider context for understanding, right?
It's kind of like a bonus question for the scientific method, right? It's like a bonus question on an OChem test.
Yeah.
It's always the most difficult thing, and you can't really complain about it being difficult because it's a bonus question. So it's like you weren't entitled to these points anyway. But it's like, how much can you really apply what you know? And you're never quite sure. It's not multiple choice. You're like, I think it's this. The answer might be one, it might be 50 billion. But it's kind of like, I've always looked at it as the bonus question for the scientific method. It's like, well, what is this really? I mean, are there radar returns? If there are, that means that there is a physical thing in our atmosphere somewhere else, or there is the perception of it, and it could be an illusion. I don't know, just like a fake.
Or there's a non-physical thing creating the impression of a physical thing being there.
Yeah. So whether it's us or whether it's an impression of us, or whether there's a band in my room, or if it's my phone playing a record of a band, whatever it is, there's something here from somewhere else that someplace else might be the Andromeda galaxy. It might be another dimension. But to me, it's like that is like the ultimate Easter egg of the human experience is like, what are these? They're from, and not only that is the implications of it just from like a national security standpoint is, well, of course it would be covered up, and not for the often touted reason of, well, humanity couldn't handle it. No, it's the material science would be so far. It'd be like bringing the A bomb from 1945 back to like 1835 or 1845. If you had it, you'd sequester it.
And there's one of the theories that some people have is that it's time travelers, right?
That too, yeah.
But what's I mentioned before we started Ross Coulthart, the Australia 60 Minutes guy. Now he's a super credible reporter. Nobody can say he isn't credible, and he's very skeptical. And he wrote this book called In Plain Sight. I think it came out last year anyway. I saw him doing podcasts last year. What really caught my attention as an Australian, I think he was getting worried about Australia's position vis-a-vis China, because Australia is not militarily ready for war. And I've talked to military people down in Australia, and it's like same thing with Canada. A lot of these Commonwealth countries, they're just stripped out. They have not kept up with their defense spending. I mean, Australia had one of the best per capita militaries for a small country around. And it's just, like everything in the supposed post-Cold War era, it's gone bye-bye. And I really got the sense in this first interview that Coulthart did that he really got interested in this, because he was thinking that there's some kind of weapon program that the Americans are hiding behind whatever this is. And I've long had this suspicion. And you mentioned Bob Lazar, wanting to get him on the show. Bob Lazar is saying, look, I only know what I read. I don't know what this thing really is. I don't know
Mm-hmm.
where it really came from. He's working on some piece of technology. Um, and so he even said something about reading it that maybe it was from an archaeological dig, right?
Yeah, he said that on Rogan. He said
On
he said
Rogan,
one he said one of them.
one of them, yeah.
He said that they said whoever
Yeah.
they are. One of them was
Now, yeah, and it
archaeological.
raises a lot of questions. There's all kinds of weird stories and rumors, and nobody has yet sorted it out. But what's really weird is now you got, Coulthard did a really solid job in his book. And the one thing you come away with, which is absolutely certain, is the US government has been working on something,
Absolutely.
super weapons, right? And that
Absolutely.
it's so secret, it's even kept from presidents and
Mm-hmm.
kept from admirals who are supposed to have oversight of such things.
Admiral
And
Tom
there is a,
Wilson.
yeah, Thomas Wilson. And it's like, and it's, Edgar Mitchell had this file, which kind of led him to that Admiral Thomas Wilson thing. So it's like, wait a minute. And it's not, it's really credible. Unfortunately, I wish I could say it wasn't credible. And what does it mean? Well, that's analysis, which is really difficult because of the complexity of the subject.
Yeah, and then the amount of misinformation, disinformation, intentional psyops. I mean, Lazar said, I'm just rereading his book because I was hoping to get him on, but he didn't. But I'm still going to finish his book because I love
Yeah.
it. I read it first in 2019, Dreamland, and I'd listened to every interview of Bob Lazar forever. And when he went on Rogan, I found out he had did a book. I watched the new documentary with him. It's all right, but the book is really good. He goes into more than he's ever gone into before. But that's what he talks about. And he talks about it in past interviews as well from the 90s and 80s old VHS tapes. But he says the first thing he thought when he was in S4 with Dennis Mariani and they give him the files is he starts looking at it and he goes, because he's walking you through all these insane security levels. And he
Right.
goes, so my next logical, he goes, as soon as I see the words extraterrestrial, he goes, I don't think aliens. I go, oh, this is another test of mental fitness. They want to see, do you believe it? Or they're kind of like when you tag proteins in the body with
Yeah.
fluorescence so that you can
Sure.
track them. You want to track misinformation. You tell
Right.
them that this is from Proxima Centauri or whatever. You tell the next scientist that it's from Betelgeuse, and then if there's ever a leak, you go, "There's the guy." You go shoot
There's
him in
the
the back of
guy.
the go
That's
shoot him in
right.
the back of the head. Yeah,
Yeah. No, no, that's exactly right. And actually that's all, that goes through my mind. I had a friend, he was a scientist. And I remember I had gone to visit him in New Mexico. He lived in New Mexico, and I drove out there, and I remember I saw it was June of 1997, and there were signs, come to Roswell, 50-year
yeah,
celebration. They were
yeah,
doing the 50-year Roswell thing. For those who don't know, Roswell
yeah,
supposedly one of these flying discs from another world crashed there, and
yeah.
in July of 1947. And so I was kind of bemused, seeing this on the highway. And so when I got to his place, knowing he was a scientist, I said, I saw all these signs, for Roswell. I said, what do you think of all that? He said, UFOs, misidentification of natural objects. He was a geophysicist. And I thought, oh, okay, that makes sense. So then, because who knows. And so then it was 2 years later, I kid you not, he calls me up. He is like, Jeff, you're not going to believe, these friends of mine in the NSA, they got me in this. There were these world-class scientists. I had to sign a non-disclosure. I can't even say who they were. And it's like, it's all real. He was telling me, and I go, Gordon, they were doing a psychological warfare thing on you. I said, look, they're doing a number on you. And I really didn't believe it.
And they're listening to this phone call. You idiot.
And you're right. Yeah. And it's like, I was, and it's like, yeah. Well, because it is very science fictiony and crazy sounding. And that at the end of World War, this is something that Vallée points out in his book on alien contact and human deception. We had during World War II, we developed some extremely elaborate deception outfits that were there to fool Hitler.
Mm-hmm.
Like in the book, The Bodyguard of Lies. And
Mm-hmm.
he quotes from that book. And it's like, but they called themselves the Martians. And they had this idea of faking an alien invasion. Remember the War of the Worlds? I think that
Orson
was just
Welles.
before World War II, Orson Welles. Now, there wasn't really as big a panic as people said, it turns out, but a few people did freak out because if they tuned in later and it sounded like a real news broadcast,
Yeah.
oh no, they wouldn't have realized. But it really got people thinking, and it wasn't only the American intelligence that was thinking, what if we faked an alien?
Well, the Russians were very
Crash.
curious about it too.
Well, and by the way, there's this weird thing. If you go to Table Talk, Hitler's Table Talk, remember, Martin Bormann had gotten these guys to secretly write down, that could do shorthand, everything Hitler said during dinner, right? And there's these books, you can get them now, and it's what Hitler was saying during dinner with his secretaries and his other close daily associates around him. And there's this really weird, towards the end of the war, statement that Hitler makes. He says, what if aliens showed up to threaten this world from another world? Wouldn't, and he was kind of thinking, like, wouldn't I get out of this war, of losing this war, because all the world would want me as an ally against the aliens?
And then Reagan also had the idea during the Cold War, right?
Right. So it's like a natural thought. It's like Hitler's losing the war. Maybe he has some secret technologies. He's thinking alien. Was he thinking to himself, wait a minute,
Do I
maybe
fake
I
it?
could fake an alien invasion and get out of being in my bunker and having to shoot myself in the head or run to Australia or whatever he
Yeah.
did. So so there you've got and this is where I get interested in it, because it's about strategy, right?
That's to me, that's the most
Deception,
interesting part is there's a
right? Deception and strategy, because there is this, when you're dealing with the Martians, in other words, our intelligence people who call themselves Martians, or Hitler saying, look, maybe I could fake it. Maybe if the aliens invaded, I could get out of being destroyed by the Allies and the Soviets, who were closing in on me from two fronts. And then you have Annie Jacobs'
yeah.
bizarre saying that the
It was
Roswell crash
it was
was
it was
Stalin's.
Stalin with Mengele.
Yeah, Stalin, and they made up they did these horrific things to little children to make them look like little people,
For
packed them
anybody
in this
for
thing,
anybody
and
listening that doesn't know what we're talking about, Annie Jacobson's and I love her, and I love all of her writings, but to me that threw me for the biggest, like,
it's crazy sounding.
but for everybody listening, so her theory is that the Russians saw the War of the Worlds and how it affected America and thought, well, what if we could overwhelm them or destabilize them? And so what she posits is the exact opposite of Occam's razor. She says that the Russians had captured Dr. Mengele, kind of like not quite mutilated, but bastardized a bunch of children, and they gave them swollen heads and eyes to look like aliens. Okay, I could see that. The Nazis were insane. Okay, and we know the Russians got some. Okay. But then she goes on to say that Stalin used an anti-gravity craft to come into the United States with these kids, crash it, knowing that it would sound insane, and that craft was launched from a mothership on the North Pole. That is all so much more difficult to believe than a
Yes,
Roswell crash, which to me and I love Annie Jacobs. Whenever I've read all of her stuff,
it's
Area 51,
well,
Operation Paperclip,
Annie
Phenomena,
Jacob, yeah,
DARPA, First Platoon, Surprise Kill Vanish. I've read all of her
yeah.
books, but
Well,
that,
she's shook. She's a good writer, and she interviews people. So she
yeah.
didn't just come up with this on her own.
Do you think
Somebody
she
fed
was?
this to
Do you
her.
think she was given a snow job
She
and
was
she?
fed this.
Yeah, it's
Now,
unfortunate.
well, okay, so but just think about it. When you're in an intelligence service, when you're doing strategy, you got to lie just to keep time,
Yeah,
right? You
yeah,
just got to lie to keep time. What time is it? Oh, you're going to tell me the wrong time now
yeah.
again, aren't you?
You got to practice. Put in the 10,000 hours.
You got to do it because, deception is a really big deal in the intelligence and counterintelligence world. It's like that funny joke from that movie. It's like, well, we knew that you knew.
Yeah,
You knew that, you know? Well, we knew that you knew that we knew.
yeah, and on and
And
on.
then it goes on, and it's like, so it's sort of, but you have to create the wilderness of mirrors. You have to reflect all kinds of things back that are they're close to the truth,
Mm-hmm.
but they're not the real thing, right? Or they're some facsimile of a truth. And sometimes the things they put out there are just plain so dumb. The Russians, the Soviets are really good at it in their managing their domestic opinions. For example, if anything significant happens in Russia or the Soviet Union, they would create several different versions of what happened and put that out. And the reason and all of the versions would be false that they would put out. And the reason they would do that is it's sort of like, imagine you're in the store and you've got all these things to choose from. People are going to, and it's a great social experiment. See what people grab, which lie people like.
Oh,
Like which lie do people who are in this profession like, or this with this background like? People who are religious will believe this one. People who are scientific minded like this one. People who are lower class or upper class or brainy or not so brainy, they'll go to different ones, right? Wouldn't it be nice to know that you
Taylor,
know what group you need to
know
target
what
to get to
flavor you
believe?
like.
Yeah,
Yeah, it's McDonald's, right? Yeah,
yeah,
it's knowing which country you're playing to. A McDonald's in China doesn't necessarily have a Big Mac. It has like noodles and something.
right.
It's like we know
Yeah,
what you want.
yeah. It's marketing meets the
Everything
big
you need,
lie.
everything you need.
Yeah, it's marketing meets the big lie. It's perfect. So, and the thing is that it's like when if Hitler was sophisticated. He was onto it. Lenin was sophisticated. You read, Mein Kampf is sort of sickening to read the whole thing, but there's a part in the book where he actually talks about the big lie, which is very famous. But he's actually describing the Soviet technique. The big lie he is attributing to them. He talks about Madison Avenue and all the advertising, Western advertising, and how good it was and how it helped the Western allies in World War I, the kind of sophisticated advertising that democracies have, free market democracies, and how really the Germans were kind of in their culture, they were kind of wanted to be more truthful, and their propaganda fell flat because it wasn't dishonest enough, right? It wasn't spicy enough. And then he talked about the Soviets and the big lie, the communists. So the real question here is when we're trying to peel away this onion to see what's underneath it, you've got all these investigators and all these people, and they're being fed all these stories. And what's really interesting is that, so Vallée has been connected to classified projects. So has he been given carte blanche that he has to say certain things?
Yeah.
I don't think so. I don't think so with him. But then you go to John A. Keel, who also put forward the interdimensional theory. And Keel had, shockingly early in his life, worked for intelligence,
Hmm.
right? And Johnny Keel is a major writer. He did the Mothman Prophecy famously. They made that movie out of it, Wake Up Number 37. Um, and then they've got, and of course his big book was, I think his most important one was Why UFOs. Operation Trojan Horse, I think was the original title, in which he has that very chill. It's a very things that go bump in the night, and it's very scary. And he says demonology is not just another crackpotology, right?
Yeah.
So he goes into the history of demonology, demons, interdimensional beings that aren't nice,
Yeah.
that are behind this. And this is what he thinks, that he calls them ultra terrestrials, and he says they're pretty evil and they don't mean us well.
Huh.
You know, um, it's
Well,
very interesting stuff. Scary. He's like the H.P. Lovecraft of ufology.
okay.
Keel is. Richard Gere played him in the movie, and it's a very creepy movie. The
One thing.
book's creepy too. Um, and then of course you've got the very bizarre, abduction stories, the Whitley Strieber series of books that it's very hard to wrap your head around it, right?
Hmm.
It's so strange. So strange that in his second book, one of the things you find is that he's abducted accidentally with his cat. And he's taken to these human-like aliens who have kind of slightly bigger heads, and they're telepathic and they're really scary. Just being in their presence is scary. And they seem very upset that the cat came along. And they're really upset by the cat being there. And they are determined to put the cat out. And he thinks they're going to kill his cat. And they just put the cat to sleep. And it's just this weird detail. I
Hmm.
mean, his stuff is so bizarre that you just can't believe that he made it up. So where does the story, where does the experiences that he is relating come from?
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah, that is kind of like, as much as I absolutely adore the idea of like a UFO craft, there's just something I love about it. It seems foolish to think that that's how they get here. And not because the most quoted is, well, the speed of light's what we think is the fastest, just like we used to think the world was flat. I hate that argument, the definitive, well, the speed of light's, yeah, huh? And it used to be that if you wanted to send information, it had to be on parchment. No one foresaw, real-time video through high resolution screens on fiber optics at the speed of light. So not even that whole consideration, which I just think is a, it's so disheartening when you hear modern astrophysicists talk about the speed of light being the limitation as to why aliens can't. That's what we understand now. That being said,
actually, physics has gone past that. At least
well,
my friend who had the briefing 20 years ago said that he had queried this major physicist. And he said, but wait a minute, you can't go faster than the speed of light.
electron entanglement, which would
And the
technically
guy
be
said, oh no, we're way
instantaneous.
past that now. Yeah,
Yeah,
they can go, you
instant.
can go faster than the speed of light. But there's, Valley's theory very seriously, has got to be taken very seriously because he really is a serious scientist. And it's sort of like his question is, well, what if they are from here?
Yeah, they might not be from somewhere else. They might be
What if
right
they're
here.
from here? What if
Yeah.
they're, and Strieber has this weird thing. He says, what if they are part of us? Right.
I remember thinking, I vividly remember flying out to Los Angeles on November 1st, 2013 for my interview at University of uh, Southern California Keck School of Medicine. It's not important, but I do remember flying out there and just reading this article about dark energy and dark matter and popular science, like nothing I hadn't heard of before. But I remember it dawned on me, like, what if they are like truly right on top of us? Much like if you didn't have a radio receiver, you'd have no idea that we are bathed in radio waves, right? Just like if you didn't have just like if you didn't have a Wi-Fi router, you'd have no idea that you were just bathing in Wi-Fi. I remember thinking, like, what if there's like another world right on top of us that is as alien to us as sound is to a deaf person? But what if there's just another like dimension that, like, if you put something on like thermal goggles and how you can see heat, what if it could just be something as like if you just got the right goggles, you would just see like a whole other society right on top of us, just morphing through us, and we might be invisible to them, but like they might be right here. Like, why not?
Well, you've got the whole angels and demons, right?
Hmm.
You see the cartoons, and there's a demon on one shoulder and
Yeah.
whispering in the ear, and the angel on the other.
Yeah.
Um, you've got this kind of thing with this, and you've got Carl Jung wrote a book on flying saucers, a modern myth of things seen in the sky. And the creepiest thing in the book is he says, what if the UFO pilots are a Charon, right? Or Charon, however you pronounce it, the boatman to Hades.
Hmm. Oh
And he
wow.
said, oh, and he's interpreting, basically, Jung was just interpreting UFO dreams to try to understand flying saucer dreams. And he says, look, it looks to me like if you are going to consult an ancient soothsayer or somebody, some wise early church father or something, you're going to say, maybe these things, these saucers are preparing for a great time of dying to carry the souls of the dead to the other side, across the river Styx, so to speak. And that's what their sudden appearance, and that the
Oh god.
appearance corresponds with the advent of the
Nuclear
atomic bomb.
weapon. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So the atomic bomb comes, they show up in great numbers, people
Oh
see them
god.
everywhere.
It's a
Yeah.
bunch of ambulances
It's
showing up 10 minutes early to an accident. You're like,
right.
what's yeah,
It's a
it's a bunch of
well,
it's a bunch of ambulances
if
showing
God
up to a false
knows
flag. You're like,
if God knows in advance,
yeah,
if
he's sending
people
all the
he's
oh
sending the
god.
rescue team in
Oh
advance,
no.
right?
Oh no.
So I mean, we just don't know. The nature of the universe is, is potentially very
It's like
strange
that
place.
scene from I don't think I've ever watched the full movie, but The Sum of All Fears, where the Secret Service guys all of a sudden just take the president and rush him out of the football stadium. Everyone's looking like, what? And there's like one or two people that are just like, oh shit. Like if the president's nearby talking to you and all of a sudden somebody listens to something in the ear, grabs them, and they all run out, guns drawn. It's like, oh man, I'm dead. Something's coming. And
It's pretty
it's the A
bad.
bomb.
Yeah.
That
Yeah.
was sorry to interrupt, but that was an idea I had, and I know it's not an original idea that the aliens have detected us dropping an A bomb, and I've used this experience before, but I'll go over it real quick. 2005, when I was a freshman in high school, it was like fall 2005. Me and my buddies were at one of our friends' house. We were at Alex's house, and we were shooting off bottle rockets, like just little shitheads, little Roman candles, and we were like lighting the neighbors' lawns on fire in like a nice suburban area of Atlanta. This was way before we drank or talked to girls. We were not because we didn't want to, but because didn't have access to alcohol and we weren't cool enough to talk to girls. So we were just lighting lawns on fire, and we do it, and then uh we would like pull the garage down, and then we'd like lay in the garage and we'd wait, and it'd take like 20 minutes, but eventually like a cop car would roll by because there are all these loud bangs and stuff, and somebody had called it in, and the cops would come by and kind of go around the cul-de-sac with just like in hindsight they probably knew where we were, they're just giving us a scare, and then they'd leave. And we did this every weekend for like several weekends, and they would always come by like 20 minutes later. We got the response time down pretty good. We were good little insurgents. And I look back at it now and I go, what was it really? So we're in an area, we're in a civilized area, suburbia. We set off an explosive. We were kids who had acquired a technology that we probably shouldn't have had. And we were disrupting other members of this suburban area, lawyers, accountants, doctors, good families that didn't want their lawns on fire on a Friday night. And so what would happen? The cops would come by, the enforcement, and they'd come by after a set amount of time, so in time, and they would get relatively close in our proximity, space. All right. And I always think to A bombs. So July 16th, 1945. We're in a civilization, humanity. We're kids, right? We just got, an atomic bomb. We're like, look at this thing go. And proximity in time. So when's the UFO crash? July 1947. It's 2 years, almost to the day. And space. How far away is Roswell from Alamogordo? It's 116 miles. So, and I know that they've been coming here for all of human history, but the most cited one is 1947. So, in all of human history, it's within 2 years. And of the entire globe, it's 116 miles. That kind of seems like the cop coming by with the flashlight. Maybe they don't know where you are, or maybe they're there to give you a scare and let you know you're being watched. But I always think about it, kind of seems like they're buzzing by, just flipping the, whoop, whoop, just, yeah, we saw it. Congrats, you discovered it. But you are in a neighborhood. You can't light other people's lawns on fire.
Well, making Annie Jacobson maybe seem more credible, is there's some weird things. If you want to, I haven't read Veli's new book he co-authored with a person who'd been investigating this case. There was this crash in 1945, just like 3 or 4 weeks after the Trinity
Oh,
test.
really?
Right. And there were until recently, two witnesses in their 80s. They were boys tending cattle on their father's cattle ranch right next to the, Alamogordo site. And there was I guess there's an airport at Alamogordo with a bluff that planes could crash into. So they got some kind of warning tower. And this thing allegedly came and crashed into the tower. Now, I'm surprised Vali in this more recent interview said that they actually had documentation from the U.S. Army Air Force that those kids were there and that avocado shaped thing had hit the thing and fell. And so this is maybe the best documented case, with one of the elderly witnesses is still alive now. And what's really interesting is that they have materials, because I think it was a hatch, if I remember, broke off this thing, and these kids went and grabbed it, and they've had it ever since.
I'm gonna make a note of it. Sorry, I'm
So
not.
the book is called Trinity. But here's the weird part.
Why Jacques?
Going back to Annie Jacobson,
Jacques Vallée.
they analyze the debris that they have from this thing. It's made on the metric system, right? Like like the Russians or the Germans made it.
Oh,
People use
the
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 metric
debris
system.
is how do you
It's
is
like a
it?
hatch, yeah. I don't know because there's things that are spaced and
Oh, I
they're
was gonna
made
say
you know, you can
okay,
measure it in metric. It fits metric measurements.
but
Uh,
they're exact measurements.
yeah, I believe
Okay.
so. But of course, I think he identified the material. I guess they're still looking at material, and he's got some scientists looking at it. So I'm not sure what they've concluded. But I thought in the earlier interview he said, you know, it was probably manufactured in Europe.
Hmm.
Um, and so it wasn't exotic. It wasn't from another planet that they could tell. But I don't know. I don't think they'd finished testing it. They were doing a lot of testing, but this is the kind of thing. It's like, so wait a minute. And then of course the weird thing is this hatch blows off and these witnesses, you know, they're hearing these little kids crying. It sounds like little kids crying, right? Well, Valley's first observation, given the way he theorized, he goes, how come they can breathe our air?
Hmm.
Right? They're from another planet. Pressure would be different, the atmosphere would be different. And besides, do they want to get germs by breathing our air? Remember
Maybe
what we did to the astronauts when they went to the moon?
quarantined them.
We quarantined them, right? Because God
Maybe
help us if there wasn't something. There's a little bit of an atmosphere on the moon, very slight. What if there's some kind of
something.
microorganism there they bring back and it just wipes us
Yeah.
all out, right? We wouldn't want that.
What if the crying is? I mean, what if that's predator? What if you're mimicking the noise of something you want to hunt? Crying baby. Anyone from any society, even me. I don't like kids, but if I heard a crying baby out in the middle of the day, I'd be like, ah, shit. You gotta go help this thing
Got
out.
to go help this thing. Well, yeah, I mean,
It's like a
and of
duck
course, this
call.
is again, you know, it's fascinating. Valley is doing this, and then in this interview that Valley gave, he shocked me by referring to Colonel Corso's information,
Oh yeah, the day after
and
Roswell.
he had apparently talked to the man, and apparently there was an interview that Corso did that's in Italian, and it's very strange because there's things in there that aren't in his book that explains that the government wouldn't let him put certain things in the book. Now that's really strange if that's true.
Yeah.
So what do you make of it? I don't know because again, Corso's military intelligence type guy. And so is his information disinformation
Is he
or some
playing ball with the?
strategic person, right? For some strategic purpose or not?
Yeah. Is he a
How do
true
you know?
believer? Yeah, is he working for Blue Book? Is he unknowingly working or unwittingly working for them?
So anybody, you know, anything you take at face value in the area of intelligence and strategy, anything you take at face value, you could end up being duped.
Yeah.
And then we have the question of if there is another intelligence, interdimensional, demonic, extraterrestrial, whatever, it could be duping us too, right?
Yeah. Yeah. If it wanted to show up here, I mean, it wouldn't if you're a demonic entity, you might not necessarily wanna if you're just here to scare, you would, but if you're here to gain trust or to win us kinda like an anglerfish with a little light in front of us,
Right.
you wouldn't show up as some, like, you know, muscle and flesh demon, that's, like, screeching in some, satanic tone. No, you'd show up as a bright light. And what do people always describe? They're like, it was a very peace Bob Lazar says it was very unsettling, which could lead to the idea that it's demonic. But a lot of people talk about, fighter pilots will say like a great peace came over me. But isn't that kind of like an anglerfish, just the light, like from Finding
Right. Well,
Nemo?
if I wanted to take a soldier, I'd want a great peace to come over him, then fall asleep, and then he was
Yeah,
not going to be a threat to me.
yeah, yeah. I mean,
Um,
how do you kill the cow? You don't walk up to it screaming. You just have the little pressure pulse. You go up,
you don't want to alarm the
pet
animal.
it on the face, done.
Right. No, you don't want to alarm the animal. Um, you know, this is the thing that gets down to it. You have exobiology, right? So the
Mhm.
idea of there's other planets, there might be plants or animals on those planets. We know now there's quite a few Earth-like planets, more than people thought there would be when they started looking. Now we have sophisticated ways of finding these planets. I guess Alpha Centauri, there's one. It's bigger than the Earth. It's orbiting a star a lot closer. It's a different, I think is it a red giant? It's a different kind of star, but it's in that correct place where it would be warm enough and it would have the right conditions. That's how close these things could be, that is, other forms of life. And of course, so you got exobiology. Well, do you then have exopolitics? And if you have exopolitics, think about this for a minute. If you have the power to leave your planet, you also have the power to destroy a planet,
Mm-hmm.
because the power it
The
would
amount of
take,
energy required. Yeah.
right, the amount of energy you have to generate to leave a planet. I mean, we had the atomic bomb before we could leave the planet.
Yeah.
We
Yeah.
did.
No, yeah.
The two things kind of go together. So when you have this capability to leave a planet, whatever, supposing there's animals on other planets, whether they're insects or whatever they are, like intelligences, you could imagine anything. I mean, the God made not just the Earth, but he made billions of galaxies. There's 400 billion galaxies, and there's a couple 100 billion stars in each of these galaxies. So you're telling me, with all the billions and billions of worlds out there, they're just all empty,
Yeah.
right? God made, it's like he just made this, it's like making a whole world and having only things growing in one field of it. It doesn't make any sense. So supposing you, and then it's very old, what is it, 20 billion years old or 17 billion years old, and it's 36 billion years across, whatever.
Yeah.
They've measured it now. They know it's a limited
Whatever
thing.
the number is absurd.
Right. The number is quite big, but it's limited. It's like Aristotle said, anything that's real is not infinite. Anything that's physically real is not infinite. The physical realm is one of limitations. So so you go to this, okay, exobiology, so they can leave the world, they have the power to destroy it. So once you are in that state, what is, you talk about predators and prey, right? So what is the number one way to survive in that environment? Now, just like people aren't all good, why would non-people who are intelligent in other places all be good? They wouldn't be, because if they're smart enough to figure this stuff out, they're smart enough to be able to do damage to others that they see as a threat. So you got a threat that is, well, they could, if they found us, they could destroy us. So what's the number one thing? Hiding. So we look out in the universe and we don't see anything. Maybe the explanation is,
You
when
don't
you
want to be
get,
seen.
yeah, when you get to that level, you realize you don't want to be seen, because there might be something else like you that could suddenly gobble you up.
Well, it's like
Right.
that. I think someone brought up the theorem. If you're alone in the jungle, do you get on top of a tree branch and yell? Maybe not. Maybe if you're really desperate, you might slink up there quietly and observe. You might not make a noise. You might go full or not Terminator, Predator. You might cover yourself in mud and just look around. It might be hiding, and then that's something I've brought up on here. And I know I keep interrupting you. I get really excited at UFOs, so I apologize. But there is one thing I remember thinking on this podcast was like, I mean, almost without exception, who are like the most successful and powerful among us? Military industrial contractors, intelligence community, ruthless NGOs. They're not Mr. Rogers. So why in
No.
God's name do we just assume the Greys are, but they're probably a lot like the military industrial complex who will just bulldoze Iraq on a whim.
Well, think about this.
Like
The Nazis invented TV. And so the first broadcasts going out into space,
our
showing
Hitler
pictures or images of this world, are showing pictures and images of what?
of Hitler screaming.
Right, right. That's so it's create a good impression on the neighborhood, right?
You know that might be kind of ballsy on our part. It's like going into prison and just killing the biggest guys. The first thing they intercept is this guy.
Well, what would a stupid animal in the forest do?
Come towards
Not
them.
realize there's other animals in the forest, right?
Yeah. Or come near the noise. They're coming. I mean, a fishing lure is a shiny object. I mean, a perfectly silver disc that just floats and shines. That man, my alarm bells go off when I think of that.
Well, there's, if you want to get creative, just and think about this, um, maybe we're the bauble.
The what?
Maybe we're the shiny object that's meant to attract something.
Oh, maybe someone put us here and we're the lure. Maybe we're the live bait.
We're the live bait.
Oh
We're the lure.
God. Oh God.
Right?
Oh, you put us here, and yeah, it's a cat playing with its food. It's a cat playing with a cricket or something.
Yeah. I
Oh
mean, if you're going to
no.
go into exopolitics, you have to entertain all these theories.
But they would walk out all these ideas.
Right. You'd
They'd
have to walk
fine
it all
hone
out. Yeah, you
and it.
would. Yeah. I mean, you would want
Oh no.
everything you could think of is possible now
Yeah.
along
Oh
these lines.
no.
Because first of all, I mean, it's like you go to Charles Hoy Fort, right? He was kind of ahead of his time. In 1919, he wrote the Book of the Damned. And Fort had found all this evidence in old scientific books, you know, of observations of superconstructions passing across the face of the moon, going across the sun, things they would saw through telescopes that they wrote down, astronomers wrote down, you know, a long time ago. And he goes through them and he goes, there's something out there. And then he has this very bizarre in the Book of the Damned. He suddenly goes, supposing we are owned, that something owns this earth, like Tamerlane, a deep space Tamerlane, they're just conquered, and that we serve some purpose. And then he says, chickens, geese, pigs, you know, what purpose do they serve? Do you talk to your chickens? Do you try to establish diplomatic relations with the hen? No, it lays eggs for you. You don't need to open an embassy,
Hmm.
right? So is some critter from somewhere else put its flag down on the earth like Columbus landing at San Salvador? Is that what we're going to expect to see? No, because what is the relationship? How does a lesser intelligence recognize a greater intelligence? How does it estimate it? It can't.
Other than if it could, it would be unnatural structures. You know, if a bird or a dog saw an apartment building, I can't know. I mean, how would I know? But I would imagine that if there's anything they recognize, it would be like that, like an unnatural structure.
But since now remember our talk last time about the fundamental nature of the universe being that spirit is primary over matter. So that you might say the phrase, it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
Um, but it's the, what you got is you've got this spiritual thing. So you can figure out all these physical laws, and you can make airplanes, rockets, nuclear weapons, maybe interdimensional travel things. But whatever you've got, you are still left with the spiritual, which, by the way, any other creature in this creation also has to account for itself spiritually. And so you don't ever get away from that.
Mhm.
And then you have to ask, well, why are we here?
Yeah.
And we weren't ultimately, you know, I really don't like these things that aliens put us here, because when you look at the history of human thought and mythology and the deep concepts that are in theology and philosophy, you realize there's something higher. There's something, you know, there's a God principle. Remember, I talked about Coolish, the scientist. There is a God. There is a creator. There's an intelligence, and so ultimately we're inside of that, and that is determining everything else. And however that's determined, whatever this is, whatever's going on here, it seems as if we are on this world free to pursue our lives and our civilization without really what appears to be serious interference from anything else.
A true like laissez-faire experiment. I mean, really hands off, just seeing how something operates on its own.
I mean,
Uh,
you've got these theories, you've got the paranoid theories like Keel, and you've got Bramley's Gods of Eden, where people claim, well, UFOs are manipulating us and we're being manipulated. And and you've got the 12 planet stuff. But the reality is that when you look at history, it doesn't really seem to have that structure, unless unless you're paranoid and everything's a conspiracy. It doesn't really have that structure, not real life, not daily life, which really, if you look at the things that happen to us, they actually have there is a kind of, how would you say it, a spiritual structure to the
Mm,
world. A structure that when you look at the Old Testament and you look at the Old Testament prophets or the Greek philosophers, you're seeing that structure reflected in in those writings.
yeah.
You know, we are not we do not know everything. We're in fact almost intentionally only know a part. And we have to find our way to the good, and we have to find our way to what's right with this imperfect, being placed in this imperfect situation, almost like a test.
That, that's what I think it is a test. I really got to use the restroom. So, Jeff, hold it down. Welcome
Oh,
to.
you're going to leave me again with the audience
That's
again.
what I always do.
Uh,
Much like a test.
you did that to me
I
before.
do it to
All
every
right.
guest. I do it to every guest. Every civilization gets a
Well, it's
Roswell.
it's a
Every
commercial
guest.
break. It's a
It's a
commercial
commercial
break.
break. Plug whatever you want.
I'm going to plug my book. I'm going to plug my book, The Fool and His Enemy. The Fool and His Enemy, right? And it is the metaphysics of evil, um, or toward a metaphysics of evil, and it's available on Amazon. And you see, I've got a picture there of George W. Bush with, look who's standing behind him, patting him on the back, looking at him like, oh, you just swallowed everything I had to offer. So that's available on Amazon. It's a quick read. It's just under 100 pages, and it kind of, I even discussed this subject we're discussing now on there about the meaning of destiny and where we're headed, and how we seem to be at a very, you could say, almost apocalyptic moment. There's some big changes coming for us, and my my latest book is, let's see if I have it here. It's the this is my original book. I do have a few left. This is The Origins of the Fourth World War. And this I wrote in the late 80s. And it was about, I knew the Soviet Union was going to collapse because I read the defector literature, right? And I knew why. And so this was but it was an overview. It's my workbook, The Origins of the Fourth World War, where I worked out a lot of ideas in terms of the politics and where we're headed, where our civilization is headed, and the problems. More recently, my more recent book is The Lies We Believe In, and that one is also available on Amazon. So I just did a crass commercial message.
Beautiful. One thing I I think about is I love critical thinking. I love it, kind of expanding my mind, but I also like to draw on like the few experiences that I do know. Right? There's a bunch of great quotes about overcoming hardship and how good wins over evil and blah blah blah. You kind of have to choose.
Not immediately though.
But then I always have to draw my own experiences of like was in perfect shape, got into medical school, had the hot girlfriend, lost a brother to suicide, gained a bunch of weight, got on a bunch of drugs, had to live with my parents for 5 years, lost the weight, got back into exercise, got sober, and built a podcast. So like I always have to draw above all else. I'm like, my own conclusions say that like never get content because you can fall to the depths of hell, but you can also climb out. And so like I kind of have to like exclude all motivational quotes I see. And I'm like, I know from my own experience, like I don't need anyone telling me that it's possible. Like I've done it. And so in that same sense, there's a lot of great, expansion of the mind and entertaining ideas that you maybe necessarily haven't seen before. But then I have to draw back on like what do I know? And it's, so long as our history is somewhat true, I have to look at it and go, think about like proxy wars or even not even second world nations. Think about like third world nations during like the Cold War. I mean, if you're really a backward, I've interviewed Delta Force Special Activities Division guys that say like they would meet farmers in Afghanistan that didn't know what America was or 9/11, and they'd never heard of Bin Laden. And they live in at the same time that I was in middle school playing on an iPod. They were out there and didn't know what the United States was. We lived in that same reality at the same time. Now imagine it's the Cold War versus the Soviet Union. There are people that are so advanced from you, they might as well be gods. They have satellites and ICBMs and subs and SOSUS nets and ARPANET, and you might just be some tribe in the middle of Syria. And if you do if you have a valuable role, like the hens laying the eggs, they might give you something, like giving a hen food. They might give you Stinger missiles, but they might give you a crate full of AKs.
Or if you're a cannibal in New Guinea and you never saw a plane until 1932,
You
and
probably
you're
think it was
living in a
God.
valley in New Guinea where 1 million people have been living in the Stone Age, and they just get discovered by accident by some Australian pilot, you suddenly find the Second World War coming down on you a few years later, and you have American GIs giving you cigarettes to bring back Japanese heads.
Yeah, yeah,
You get the rest of the fine eating, but you
yeah,
have to bring the Japanese heads in.
yeah. And then there's the story in the Pacific of like those planes that were dropping supplies, and they didn't know what it was, and they thought
The
it was a
cargo
yacht.
cult.
So they had they had a church, and instead of a crucifix in the center, they had the outline of a plane because it was dropping food and water and lighters and MREs. Like,
Mm.
so if we know that from our own history, we have to take that one step further and go, why can't it be happening again? Why can't there be a proxy war between a an alien United States that we would like to think of as quote unquote good and maybe an alien Soviet Union that is quote unquote bad, or whatever nations you want to choose? They would be god tier technology. If we had a valuable role to them, we would be given something or given weapons. And they might not necessarily have the best diplomacy with us because ultimately they have the biggest stick. So just like maybe a tribe's not working with us, hey, we're gonna bomb your town. Remember whose side you're on. They might abduct you. They might blow up a city. They might give you a treasure. They might give you some technology, like a Roswell craft. Go, here you go. Here's a little thing. Work with that. That's not even our good stuff. That's our old crap. If we have seen it in our own, not even in the last century, why can't it happen again? Why can't it just go one step further? And it might not be necessarily off world, it might be interdimensional. It might be one step higher. Why couldn't it
Well,
get there?
the problem is the human race is really stupid.
Oh
And
yeah.
this is my, my latest essay that I published yesterday. It's Strategic Culture and the Art of Seeing. And I quote Julius Evola, who says a great majority of Americans can be said to represent a refutation on a large scale of the Cartesian principle, cogito ergo sum. They do not think and are, right? And he says, better yet, in many cases, they're dangerous individuals, and in several instances, their primitivism goes way beyond the Slavic primitivism of Homo Sovieticus. So the thing is the one thing we have to realize is, it's like one of my favorite philosophers, Dirty Harry Callahan in Magnum Force, says a man's got to know his limitations, right? And we're very limited in our ability to think. We don't do it very well. And nowadays, and I argue in the essay, is just as a strategy analyst, which is what I mainly am. I look at everything I watch on TV. We're watching the war, watching the analysis, watching Douglas McGregor say on day 10 that the war is almost over and the Russians have won. It's like, wow, I've talked to him, I've interviewed him myself, and it's like, wow, that's dumb, because even I could see on day 10 that wasn't what was happening,
Yeah.
right? And so, and then other really people I respect who have interviewed again, Andrei Larionov, who signed on to the Center for Security Policy, worked at the Cato Institute, saying absolutely there wasn't going to be a Russian invasion. And I saw the deployments the Russians were making in the middle of January, and I said there is going to be a Russian deployment invasion, because these deployments are invasion deployments, are not an exercise.
Hmm.
And because I've studied operational art of war, and so I could actually read a military map and say, okay, they're planning to go after Kiev. You could see that by where they put their paratroop divisions, where they were, how they were balancing their line. You could see it was a double envelopment attack. All those things you could see. They were going to invade. But all these, and the thing I noticed is that when people in our society, every society has blinders. And our big blinder is economics. We think everything boils down to economics, right? The business of America is business. It's all about money. So that we even believe that war is about money.
Mm-hmm.
But I call that into question. War is not about money. It isn't, because Clausewitz was right. War is a duel on a tremendous scale. And who duels over money?
Yeah.
People duel over honor.
Yeah.
They duel over the right to do something, sovereignty, all kinds of other things. But it's never about money because, as Joseph Schumpeter pointed out, there's an economist after my own heart. Joseph Schumpeter pointed out in his book on imperialism and social classes, imperialism doesn't really work financially. You're paying out more than you're getting. And he pointed out that the whole reason for imperialism was you still had the warrior aristocracy classes in Europe, and they needed somewhere to go for their second sons and cousins who under primogeniture weren't going to get anything. So how were they going to get anything? They had to go overseas and make their fortune in Africa, in India, wherever there were colonies to be had. And so that's where Winston Churchill came out of. His cousin got to be the Duke, the Duke of Marlborough, right? And he was a cousin. He wasn't going to get it. His father was a younger brother. So what did he do? He went out. He participated in the last cavalry charge of the British cavalry, and went out there went out into Africa and fought in the Boer War. And so those were the adventures that a young aristocrat would have. Because it wasn't about money. It was about honor, because aristocracy is about honor, not money. They got the land, right? And how do they get their land? Some guy gets knighted. He gets a baronet, right? Because of what? Things he did on the battlefield. The feudal medieval system. So Lenin was wrong. Lenin said that, colonialism, imperialism was the last gasp of capitalism. No, it was the last gasp of feudalism. And as soon as World War II hit and all those aristocracies just went away, there were no more Churchills, there were no more aristocrats. They gave up their colonial empires. There was no reason for it. There were no sons of baronets or younger sons of baronets looking for a way to make their fortune, following in the warrior traditions, because after all, aristocracy in Europe, it was a warrior aristocracy. So when everything's about the bourgeoisie and making money, as in America, big business, there's no reason for imperialism. So the communists, they got it all wrong. It's a smear against capitalism. Capitalism has other problems. It's focused on money. That's a problem. What happens to honor, right? And what happens to honesty? Word related to honor, right? And keeping your word and see, what I find in bourgeois society is more and more the case is nobody really cares about the truth.
What would you say about our military not expenditures, our military presence around the world, and then as well as the Chinese Belt and Road Initiative, which is really just what we already have, which is kind of ironic that I myself above everyone else always criticize the Belt and Road Initiative, ironically never once questioning our 800 military bases around. But could you say that imperialism is still here?
Unless
In some new form, or
unless you count, Puerto Rico and Guam as an empire.
okay.
We gave the Philippines their liberty. We gave Cuba back. We invaded Mexico, took Mexico City, and we just took the empty Southwest where nobody but Indians were really living. I mean, we didn't really make an empire. Everybody here is a citizen, not a subject. Right? Where we got a subject, we want to get rid of Puerto Rico and we let them vote and they want to stay. It's like, no, vote to be your own country. Go away, please. We don't want you. The military bases exist because of the Cold War, and because we took over the British role of freedom of the seas, and we defend the commerce of the world.
Free passage, yeah.
It's the commerce of the world, and we have to defend it against predatory countries. We intervened because Iraq invaded Kuwait, and Saddam Hussein was continuously into mischief, right? I mean, Saddam Hussein invaded 2 of his neighbors, and he would have gone more. He was a crazy person.
Yeah.
We're keeping North Korea in check. It turns out we're keeping China and Russia in check. Why? Because there's a difference between countries that are actually feudalistic. I mean, you look at the social organization of Russia and China, they are not modern countries. It's like you don't have a genuine free market. You have a feudalistic thing where you get this position and you run this company for the higher level people in the party than you.
And there's a
It's
Communist Party member on every board of every corporation in China.
That's right. They have the secret party committee on, and
Yeah.
that's basically telling them what to do. So you don't, it's not, it's a kind of almost feudal system, and people get their positions because they're loyal to those above them in the, you got this vertical relationship. In the market system, there's more of this horizontal where we're all competing, right? And so on. So, theoretically, the 2 systems, it's like Andrei Navrazov coined the term. He said there's the zone of culture, the zone of commerce and culture, and there's a zone of militarism, which he would count China and Russia and North Korea. They're focused on, I mean, look at Russia. Look at the poverty in Russia and China. It's all about building these super weapons. They put more of their GDP into weapons. It's just unbelievable that they're putting so much into weapons. Why? Because they're more old-fashioned in that way, and it's weird because they've got a modernistic, dialectical, materialistic, and we talked about this before. It is a feudalism out of despair.
Hmm.
It is a form of autocracy. And what's amazing is how everything is divided up in Russia, and we find about all the corruption. Their tanks don't work, their supply system doesn't work, their own leaders have embezzled billions so that their poor soldiers go out and don't have uniforms. And now we find out maybe their tactical nuclear weapons don't work.
I'm gonna make a note to send you an episode. My buddy Roger and I did an episode a couple months ago, and he brought up the idea of like, do their nuclear weapons work? Incorporate like the amount of tritium or the amount of maintenance it takes, the
Yeah,
select few, who's overchecking it, and how would you ever know except for a time of war? But that's another.
it's like a $50,000 watch that has to be kept in perfect order, right?
Yeah. Locked away in a safe that no one's allowed to see.
Yeah.
Oh
Well,
yeah,
of
it's
course,
it's there. Oh yeah, don't
you
trust me.
and of course you have these atypical earthquakes in Russia that we know are nuclear tests. So they break all their treaties. It's just normal. It's like Lenin said, treaties are like pie crusts. They're meant to be broken. So dig in, just go ahead. But the thing is, and we haven't tested one in 30 years. Okay. We ought to. The Biden administration is very anti-nuclear. They would get rid of all of our nuclear weapons tomorrow.
We
So, but we're sort of, America is sort of the only thing between the whole rest of the world and China and Russia gobbling everybody up.
and that is, as much as I know I get criticized on this podcast for being rah rah America. I'm I'm not, obviously I'm biased to say this, but and it's my own ego, but I'm not stupid. I know that it's not perfect. I know that there's a lot of blemishes on
There
this.
are no perfect countries. It's
There never
impossible.
there never will be.
Never
Wait,
will be.
yeah,
No.
yeah. Wait until you find the perfect partner or the perfect friend. You'll
Right.
you'll go to you'll go to your grave lonely.
Yeah, that's right.
I
And look, if your country had to be perfect for you to be loyal to it and want the best for it, you might
it
as
would
well live on
never
a desert island.
it would never arise because everyone's
No.
waiting for the perfection. You get
Right.
to perfection. You
Right.
don't just become Tom Brady. You don't just
No.
become the Beatles. You have a lot of shitty sets first. But I look at the United States for all of its flaws, and I say it's it's the least worst. It's pretty damn good. If you want to be critical of it, it's the least worst option, and I do think it's worth defending if it's a bulwark against Russia and China.
Well, the thing is that look, a person has to know that uh, they belong to a side. This is what really bothers me is when talking about the lack of intellectual culture and strategic intellectual culture in America is that our intellectual culture seems to be that we can't put anything together in a way that we actually are for ourselves. We always end up being against ourselves. Whether you're on the left and you want to sacrifice America for the planet, or you're on the right and you think that America is is the deep state and we have to have Putin as our hero to save us by wrecking America with Putin,
All
right?
self-hatred, yeah.
Yeah, it's self-hatred both from the right and from the left. And so you remember Yuri Bezmenov, the KGB guy, gave these interviews
Active measures.
and active measures. And he said what it basically means is to change the perception of reality of every American to such an extent that despite the abundance of information, no one's able to come to sensible conclusions in the interest of defending themselves. And they
Despite
look around and this is my point. Nobody comes to a sensible conclusion about defending themselves. The Biden administration wants to get rid of our nuclear weapons and close down all our oil
oil,
refineries.
yeah.
So we're all going to sit in the dark and freeze to death, right? And then you've got the Republicans who, if they get in, supposedly Kevin McCarthy didn't say for sure, will cut off the aid to Ukraine so that Russia can then own Europe, right?
Yeah.
Because if Russia wins in Ukraine, you think they're going to stop?
No.
No, why would he?
No.
I wouldn't stop.
Well, of course not. It's the world is as nice. The world you can be as good as the world allows you to be.
Yeah.
And again, I'm aware of my biases. I grew up here and I love the United States. But there's something to be said for having a military force more powerful than the rest of the world and not subjugating it to your own empire. That's there is power there. I mean, there is good there. And I understand I'm drinking the Kool-Aid and I know people have that critique, but
Well, no, I don't, it's not a look. I was against the invasion of Iraq,
sure.
and I got a very simple way of explaining it. It isn't morally wrong to destroy a dictator. It's not morally wrong.
Hmm.
And a dictator hates you and is looking for a weapon of mass destruction, which, by the way, he scurried them, he hid them all away in Syria so
He
that
also
we
had
wouldn't find him, or Lebanon. And so he had him. He just got rid of him so he wouldn't get caught. But okay, so that's not morally wrong. It was strategically stupid to invade him because Saddam Hussein was serving a very important role for us. He beat down on the Iranians. He scared the Saudis to death. Everybody in the whole region needed us there to be their buddy,
yeah,
to keep him in his box.
yeah.
I mean,
Good
we
cop,
couldn't have
bad cop.
invented a better guy to make us necessary to all those countries who otherwise would go, oh, the Americans are arrogant. We don't need them. It's
You then
like,
have to wonder,
yeah,
was that war gamed out then? Are we not seeing a bigger picture? If we couldn't have invented a better guy, I can almost imagine you and I are saying this to some like general in a bunker, and he's looking at us almost like a parent as the kid's realizing something. It's like, and well, we
yeah,
got rid of them. Why?
because
Is
we're
there
stupid.
that or that?
It's because we're stupid. Look, it's like I remember Christopher Story was interviewing the GRU defector 20 years ago. Victor Suvorov, that's his pen name. His real name is Vladimir Rezin. And so he asked him, he said, was the fall of the Soviet Union like a charade? Was it like fake? And are they still continuing? Because of course they are. And he goes, well, you defected to Britain. You talked to the British intelligence and all these other people. Don't you tell them that the Soviet Union's still there, that they're maybe attenuated, but they're still coming for everybody? And he goes, yeah, of course I do. And he goes, well, why don't they listen to you? Why don't they believe it? He says, because they're stupid. That was his answer.
All right,
Because they're stupid.
fair enough. Fair
You
enough.
know,
I was just trying to think like I always, if anything, it's just for my own intellectual curiosity. Like I love just playing it out in my mind. It's like an exercise for your brain. But I always try to think just like what would be for the most part I do think they're stupid. But I'm like, if this was a grand plan, if this was a Tom Clancy novel, what would it be?
If what in particular was a
Any
grand
just
plan?
choose anything. You just choose anything. And so like right now, I'm like right
Well, that's
now
the
we're
whole idea behind conspiracy theory,
well,
right?
yeah, that's why I love him so
The
much.
the the idea of conspiracy theory is that there are these people that are so smart they can actually control events. Well, just try controlling events.
I
Just in
don't.
your day, just try running a business where you control the
Oh,
events.
I'm trying to run a solo podcast with no employees but myself, and I find that I can't. I thought it would be easier being a single person company
Right.
because I'm
Yeah.
the executioner. I get to do
Well,
whatever.
try to manage other people.
Oh
Look, it's
yeah,
like
no,
herding
it's
cats,
oh
right?
yeah, no, it's hey, I was in a fraternity for 2 years. That's what blackpilled me on ever working with anybody ever was being in a fraternity and going, it's in our interest to
Right.
keep the frat house clean. And you can't get anyone to you can't get people to throw in money to buy beer so that the hot sorority girls will come over. You couldn't get them to if you couldn't herd them to do that, how in the hell am I gonna create an accounting company? No, you're preaching to the choir.
You
That
know,
being said,
I owned a company. I managed people for quite a few years, and I'm good at it. I'm actually good at it. I found that was one of my talents. But what I found was you don't ever control people. Managing people is the opposite of controlling them. You assess them, you give them their head, and you say, look, it's up to you. You can do this, or you can screw me and you'll be gone and I'll get somebody else.
oh
But
yeah,
is it,
no,
and it's like I'm looking for somebody who's right for me and I want to be right for them. I want to treat them good,
yeah,
so we can have a good thing here going on,
yeah.
as an employee employer thing. And that, by the way, that works best.
Oh no, it's an art.
Yeah.
It's an artistic dance
Yeah. It
to
works
have
best.
someone
And
work
there are
with you.
people
Yeah.
that just simply want to get over on you. And if
Yeah.
you know how to hear that when you're interviewing them, when you hear they're charming you and they're trying to outwit you in the interview,
Yeah.
right? It's
Yeah.
like, all right, this guy's going to last about 2 weeks with me, you
I,
know.
I've always found a good way to judge people is playing online video games with them. Is
What
when
kind of games do you
a-
mean?
anything we're both on a team, we're both fighting, we're both shooting people and whatever. We're in a building, we got to clear out the terror, whatever. Something like that where the stakes actually don't matter, and you see how they'll go and take a bullet for you, or they'll come and revive you even when the bullets are flying. That's just little things like that. Yeah, all right, you noted. You can just see how people behave.
Well, games are serious.
Yeah,
And I believe that, see, this is the problem. I was in academia, and what I realized was all these strategists, these would-be strategist academics getting their PhDs, they couldn't do strategy. They could do equations, they could do numbers, they could follow these formulas of how to think about strategic problems, but all of it was wrong because they didn't have the sense of anything. They didn't have that larger ability to integrate anything. And the reason is that if you gave them a real situation to be in, they would do the wrong thing. They wouldn't know what to do because the game they've been playing was the academic game. And so everything became about that. And so what I found was valuable was that strategy games turn out to teach you strategy. So what you were just saying about people, judging people, look, you know how you win most games against people? Most people are quitters. If
attrition,
things are going a little bad for them, they start whining.
break them.
They start saying, they start making complaints, complaining. And it's like those people,
They start plaguing everyone with the we're gonna lose. We're gonna get
right?
what? No, you want the person
Because
that
they have no grit, they have no ability to handle adversity. And the thing is that nobody, if you really are going to do something difficult, and all real contests, because strategy is a zero-sum game, you're going to have losses in a zero-sum game. And you take, Clausewitz says in war, the least thing is very difficult. And there's this thing he talks about, it's called friction, right? There's always friction. So you have to have, and this is one of the great qualities that Clausewitz and military people have. It's endurance, stamina, it's fortitude, which also is translated as courage. Fortitude and courage are related. So fortitude isn't just the strength to keep standing up, to keep driving ahead, but there's also connected to courage. How much damage are you willing to take? How much of a personal sacrifice are you willing to make to get to the other side? And this is the thing that gets me, is that here's where the Russians are making a really big mistake with Europe, cutting off their fuel and making them cold in the winter. If you want to beat somebody, if you want to defeat them, you make them softer.
Yeah, keep them cozy.
Keep them cozy.
You don't
That's the
want
way to defeat them. You're making them cold and hungry.
You're making the
You're
average
making,
person. You're bringing them into the fight now. No, you want to
that's
keep
right.
it. You
Yeah,
want to keep it a news blurb. You
right.
don't want it to be in their living room.
No, and see, this is what they learned from the very controversial strategic bombing survey after World War II.
Mm-hmm.
The German resistance, from all evidence, the way I read it, is the German resistance increased by being bombed, because you did two things. First, by bombing civilian areas, by firebombing and murdering civilians by the tens of thousands, you were teaching them that you were evil and you were worth fighting against.
Mm-hmm.
Because you just did something evil. You just bombed civilians in their
Perfect propaganda.
right. And so this is perfect propaganda for Joseph Goebbels. When we call the bombing of Hamburg Operation Gomorrah, what's that? We think the
Yeah.
Germans are going to feel guilty that we're mass murdering their civilians.
Yeah.
Come on, give me a break. So it was stupid. And then because they believe more in their own cause and more in the wickedness of the thing they're fighting, they're going to fight harder. They're going to work longer hours. They're going to put out more production. And you're wiping out all those old facilities. They're building new ones underground that are more efficient and turn out more tanks and more airplanes and more artillery pieces. So see, when you do certain things to people, you're really not helping yourself. And there is, Clausewitz talks about will, that you have to break the enemy will through a bloody contest. The thing that breaks people's will is not necessarily a medicinal dose of hardship. What breaks them is massive death and slaughter and destruction in a way that makes them lose all hope. And that's what you do when an army gets flanked and surrounded, and every soldier knows, okay, this is the end. Drop your rifle and you run. But you have to remove that hope. And just bombing people doesn't do that.
Yeah. Yeah, there is it's more of a light switch. It's like it's not a dial. Because if you bomb people, you're not bringing them into the fight, right? And much like a virus that you're using and disinfected against, they're becoming more resilient. So it's like, don't do that because you're not bringing them into the fight. You want to keep them fat and lazy. But if you are going to bring them into the fight, don't cut off their gas, burn their cities to the ground, and nuke their hometown. You either have to completely break their will or don't get them involved at all.
And here's the problem with nuclear war, and this is a controversial statement, but imagine you're in a nuclear war. If you're dead, you have no say in the morale. But if you're alive, think about the exhilaration of having your country nuked and you're alive. And you're thinking, wow, I survived that. Maybe I can survive anything.
Yeah,
right?
You got nothing to lose.
See, that's what people don't realize. There are all these psychological moments that people haven't thought about. And, like we think about deterrence and are thinking like Columbus falls right off the edge of the flat earth of our thinking. We don't realize that there's another world on the other side. So we don't go there because we're so scared of it. But the fact of the matter is, once you're there, you go, okay, I'm alive. And I want to keep living. So guess what? I'm not giving up.
Yeah, it's YouTube thinking they're gonna shut down a story by banning people. And it's like, dude, you just go somewhere else and then you realize that you're not dead and you're like, oh, fuck that $1 trillion company. You're like, I can do this. I still got a camera.
How much money has YouTube, how much have they shot themselves in the foot? And now this thing that you're on here now, is how much is that going to bring in now? Who's going to end up on top? In the end, it is, this is the problem that people have, is that, like we were talking about, controlling other people. Getting people to do what you want is not an easy game. And this is why war is so terrible. You have a whole nation, a whole tribe over here trying to get this tribe to do what they want. You are going to give us these, Donbass and Kherson and Zaporozhye. You're going to give us those provinces and Crimea. We already figured that, but you're going to have to cry uncle and say, we get that too. All right. So what do you have to do to punish that country to get them to cry uncle and say, okay, you can have it. You can have the 5 provinces, the 5 oblasts, as they call them. Guess what? They've bombed them. They've invaded them. They've murdered them. They've struck at their power plants. They've done everything to them. The Ukrainians are like, no, we're fighting. We're taking everything back. And Russia's 3 times their size. And they're doing it. And it's like, and wow, they're succeeding at it. At least it appears so now. So see, it is not, and this is what Napoleon said, and it's, I don't remember if Clausewitz repeated this, but Napoleon said that morale is to physical strength, physical numbers, what 3 is to 1. It's 3 times as more important to have a higher spirit and morale than it is to have the numbers on your side.
Right.
Because you will fight harder, you will march faster, you will endure more than the other side, and you will prevail.
Or the other quote, 1 volunteer is equal to 20 conscripted soldiers.
Well, certainly in Ukraine, we see it with the conscripted Russian soldiers.
Yeah.
Yeah.
To kind of wrap this full circle, do you think the reason why we are seemingly so unworried about nuclear war, it could just be stupidity and we're walking to our death? Or does it make you wonder, is there a trump card? And not, I know that term has forever been corrupted by, no, that doesn't mean Donald Trump. I mean, is there I don't know if it's based on UFOs. Is it just the natural advancement of technology? Do we have some trump card that really makes them impotent? Some
Well,
secret weapon?
that's the reason I brought up the UFO thing, because the answer to whatever's behind that is some kind of new technology. And if Ross Coulthart's In Plain Sight is any guide, there is something. I mean, he talks about patents, bizarre patents that the Navy has
Mhm.
gotten for one of its engineers. There's something there. And we have some kind of, now, do the Russians and Chinese have these super weapons? Are both sides sandbagging? To some extent, I think that's got to be the case. That each side is like, this is like show me time. We're in a war, so what card are you going to play? Because once you play it, if the other guy has a higher card, you're
Yeah.
done,
Yeah.
right? So this is really like a very nerve-wracking. This is much more like poker because you can't
Yeah,
see the
both
other
balls in
guy's
our hand.
cards.
Yeah, what do
Yeah,
you got? Royal
you
flush? Straight?
can't,
Yeah.
right? And so, so therefore, when I'm watching President Putin on Russian TV last month, sitting there saying, "I am not bluffing." It's like, who plays poker and says, I'm not bluffing?
I'm not lying, guys. I got 4 aces.
That's very Russian to not understand an American game. Okay, they are good at chess. They know all that stuff. But in chess, you can see all the pieces.
Yeah.
They're all right there. And see, there's the little problem there is that they walked into a buzzsaw when they invaded Ukraine, which means their intelligence isn't as good as it was a decade ago or 2 decades ago. And look, Mr. Putin's hat size is not big enough for him to be a genius.
Hmm.
The guy is not the equal of Andropov. He's not the equal of even Brezhnev, who actually had some very interesting ideas as a political thinker. I don't like Marxism, Leninism, but he actually had some intellectual curiosity going on, and he put together some interesting teams of people. You've got brilliant people like Marshal Sokolovsky and KGB General Mironov and Suslov. They were really brilliant strategists. I don't see anybody like that in Russia now.
Yeah.
I don't hear about them. Maybe they exist, but when looking at what they're doing in Ukraine, it is so freaking incompetent that it's a great relief. It's not that they might not nuke us, but to see that that they have degraded, that they have degenerated to that extent, leaves me with the hope that our own degeneration hasn't outpaced them so much that we're doomed, right?
Hey, they're screwed too.
they're screwed too. I think there is a general degeneration, and I think I talked about this because of this materialism, the rotten pragmatism and materialism. I think that is a problem, but I suspect we do have something.
It's
I
like
really do.
it's kind of that company of misery when you and your friend are both going into the final exam and you're like, dude, I didn't study at all. And he's like, oh, thank God. Me neither. And it is almost sort of like, even though it doesn't make it better, his F doesn't make your F better. It also kind of does. I guess maybe, and maybe there is a pragmatism to it because if we all fail, then there's going to be a curve. So
Unfortunately, yes.
yeah, I don't know. But then you had an asshole like me who was always studied and that was like, you guys, like, there's blood in the water. You're retaking this class because I'm getting an A. That I don't know. Maybe that's China. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't think there's something wrong with them.
I used
And
to think that they were the up and comer, but something about them now seems like I wouldn't say that they're nothing. I just kind of tend to see them as kind of like us as well.
well,
Like,
there's a new paper out from the University of Chicago, and and they got good economists there. And this paper says that China is 60%, its economy is 60% smaller than we think.
whew,
Ah, right, right. And you know
wow.
what? I think that guy is right. I think he's right. The malinvestment in China is so tremendous, and I think they're about to hit the wall. And the danger of war is this hitting the wall, really. The danger is these desperate countries going down because of their own false premises. You know, when you have societies based on a lie and based on things that are false and wrong and evil, you're headed for a fall, whether it's us or them. And all these people say how evil America is. If you look at China and Russia, we're not as high up
You,
on the scale of evil as they are. I'm sorry.
you to me, the proof is in the pudding. If you really thought we were evil, you would have left. If you
Well,
really thought we were that bad, you would have left. If
we're
you, and maybe you do think we're that bad. If you truly thought that no one
eh,
else was worse, you would have left.
well, yeah, I mean, if there was somewhere better to go, I mean, my ancestors and your ancestors, they were all immigrants to this country.
Uh
They
huh.
all left somewhere to come here. That's
America's race.
probably in our blood. Yeah.
You would leave.
Yeah.
You would leave if you really thought it. And not only that, immigrants from all over the world wouldn't drag their balls through broken glass to get here. So I'm
Yeah.
not saying it's perfect, but the gradient of immigration and the lack of emigration out, I think that speaks for it seeks its own level.
Yeah. Well, the way the people are treated in China and the way, look at the way the Russians treat their own soldiers, the Russian government.
Yeah.
No, and selling organs from
Yeah.
political
China,
prisoners in China. I
human
mean, you can,
trafficking.
the
Yeah.
list goes on and on. The Lao guy, the kind of the way they have political prisoners in Russia, and that by calling an invasion, you can end up going to jail in Russia. I mean, come on, you know. We've got our problems. We've got, the 1-6 people and the crazy extremists in on the left that want to, limit speech. But I think we can beat them.
We gotta wrap this up because I got another guest coming in, but I did want to end on the note of I said it the other week. I was at the gas station last week. Somebody had written FJB, fuck Joe Biden, and someone had written next to that FDT, fuck Donald Trump. And in a brief moment, I was like, that is beautiful because whoever wrote that is not in jail for, criticizing the king. And I am not at risk for failing to report the criticism of the king. I was like, it may look like crass, and it is technically, it's, graffiti and destruction of property. It's not yours to write on. But that being said, there's something beautiful about just those simple FJB and FDT. You can just say that and get back in your car and go about your life. And the secret police aren't cuffing you. There's something beautiful there. If anything, that's my marker. I'm like, that's a good place to be. For all of our flaws, you're not wrapped up. You and your family aren't rolled up and worked to death in some limestone quarry.
Our freedom is not perfect, but we still have it.
Exactly. Exactly. But hey, Mr. Nyquist, thank you so much, man. I'll text you after this. Let's get another one on the books. And I got one more after this. And then for anybody listening, podcast is gonna be offline for probably like 10 days or so. But I love talking to you, man. I like that we can just go off about UFOs for an hour. I always appreciate that mental flexibility, and I look forward to many more episodes with you. I'll put all your links in the description. Closing
All
thoughts,
right.
final words.
Thank you for having me, and good luck on your move.
Thank you, sir. I hope it's the last move I ever do. I seriously hope to be in this
It
next
won't be.
department until
It won't
20.
be.
I know. But let me drink the Kool-Aid for a minute and say that I'll be there forever. I know I won't be. Thank you so much, man. God
All
bless.
right.